Very good evening. Come here to Interface on SABC2. My name is Samachele. Well, vet students have vowed to continue the Fees Must Fall campaign until all their including free quality education for all. Despite government's and also the university's decision fee increases next year, the hashtag campaign has raised some pertinent issues. Is higher education a right or a privilege? And I know that raging on social media. So let's our guest to chat to us a little bit more about this. Mr. Force is a constitutional law expert. He is in our studios, and Dr. Diane Parker is the General in the Department of Higher Education, joined by Thabo Moloja, who is the President of the Union of Students. Thank you very much to all of the program. Starting with you, Thabo, increase next year, and thereafter, is it business as usual?
So as usual. Remember, the broader call is free quality for the poor and the working class. No fees. Next year is just one of those broader struggle.
So do you consider that?
We consider that victory in part. For a battle, not necessarily the war here. Bigger interest is the war. But we believe that this is the victory that must be celebrated by students. Is their own victory. This has been their own struggle. That not just vets. I think one of the things that has made this as if it's a vets issue, and this has been
not really. I think in all fairness to the media, what's happened at Stellenbosch University, at UCT, at Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University, at Rhodes, at Fort Hare.
Yes, quite true. But I'm saying, like, none of you today can tell what is happening in other institutions except it leads to the question of tomorrow. And I think that is an unfair balancing, because there were 17 universities that were on program, University of Venda down to Cape Town. But there seem to be this just report. I'm not saying it must not be reported. It's good that it must be reported. So our comrades there must be expressed. No. Discourse.
All right, fair enough. Let's talk about the Professor De Vos. I want to pose this question: the role of government and universities. Let's start. How has government responded to this? Do you feel that they've done an adequate job?
Well, I don't know if I'm competent to evaluation on that. I think that a broader problem that is not just what week. I'm not sure that the government, especially the way in which it used the security forces to react against peaceful, could be condoned. I think that was really appalling. But this is a longer process of the government trying to, of course, make the education more accessible, but not actually giving the funding is going to help students who cannot afford to actually gain and get to university and not be excluded purely on the basis they cannot afford this. And there, I think there has been a big problem. We have now at least no increase for next year. That is not the end of the question, because there are still many students who actually could easily pass, will pass if they get the opportunity, but they won't go to university simply because they don't have rich parents. Clearly, it's not a tenable situation.
Mr. Parker is here to speak on behalf of the government. Things that government has said is that there simply is more money. You know, they have to scramble to try and bridge the gap of what's going to happen next year. What do you make of that?
Well, you know, the Constitution says that the state, the government, has a duty to take steps to make higher education more available and more accessible. So the government has done it more available by creating more spaces for students. But the accessibility part has not happened as it should have, because in real terms, universities have decreased, and then the money that is given to each student, government as funding, has also dramatically makes it very difficult for university, because then fees, the universities haven't really fought this. I think it's fault the universities in this, the managements. And then what happens is poor students are not included, and there's a kind of discrimination against people. And we know, given our history and given the demographics and the class issues in South Africa, mostly be black students. And so I think we need to really rethink the whole matter. If there's money for 14 billion bailout for Petro SA and for, I don't know how much they gets from a bailout from the government, then surely to invest in the future.
Well, Dr. Parker, there's been a lot of criticism the department's way. They've said you haven't taken the issue seriously enough. You've been responding to what the students have had to say, innovative enough in coming up with solutions. I mean, what's your from the department's perspective?
Look, I think in the media around the department, I think it's always easy to blame government for everything. Higher education sits within the larger government with many other departments. One of the things that we have been arguing for many years, actually I can't tell you how long, I've been there since 2008, we have argued for more funding to higher education because we see youth as being a critical aspect of development for the country. We don't see it as a liability, we see it as an investment. But government at a higher level has to make many different decisions in terms of how to cut between competing needs. And so you look at the budget overall and you look at the need for education, the need for health, for all these other various important things, development and so on, that's where the thing has to happen. And it doesn't happen inside the Department of Education. We get a budget from government. That kind of decision has been made. And yes. I think one of the big pushes was to get basic education for all in place.
But so that report that the minister, we are hearing that the minister has been sitting on for 3 years, and that says that free education at tertiary, particularly universities, is actually a possibility.
Okay, perhaps we need to just get the facts straight on that. Good to do that. That report was in 2013. The Minister Working Group on Fee-Free Higher Education. And what that report did was make a number of various recommendations around what it would take to implement fee-free education. And I think we have to, it wasn't for all, it's really for those who specifically
so why
needed.
Wasn't it implemented?
And at that, one of the ways you have to implement something like funding. So you can't publish a policy without the funding that underpins it. Then we have been going with national bids to Treasury, requesting the funds to enable us to implement in an effective way.
So it's Treasury that has not been made.
Don't want to blame Treasury. That's not the way the budgets get decided. They do get decided through. So there is a fairly complicated process. But you know, you can blame any. But we have, the minister did not publish that. You can't publish a report that you, a policy if you don't have the funds to implement.
I'm going to ask you to hold that thought because we have to pay the so that we don't ask for more money from government. So please join us after this. Welcome back. You're watching Interface, and we are talking about what everybody's talking about, what's been happening with. We welcome your thoughts on Facebook and also on Twitter. To get in touch with us, you can do so by finding us at SABC, at Interface on SABC, at Tembisa Magele, or at Interface on SABC. Now, Thabo, you say that the only university that has decided not to go back lectures tomorrow. Is that?
That's students during the day at 2, and they're still living now. we hope that we'll come with a decision that says the struggle continue for free education back to classes, mainly because this has implications for international students who are supporting our cause and our struggle, our students at VETS, that by end of the year it's going to come to an end and they'll have to go home. Next day, if these protests are still continuing, they can't come in because do so through having a visa. But we also are blocking and thousands of students who will be coming from the basic education to so say we resume class after we suppose win the free education. Of the matter is those students will have been disadvantaged because they will not be new students being taken into by the sector.
So I understand that also the has also decided that they're not going back to. But is there division now amongst the students in terms of the position that you're taking?
There's serious division from the students. If you look into the social networks where this campaign in terms of presence, you'll see that there's a lot of students who are, we said we rejecting the 6% because we want now we get 0, we want free education. We understand the struggle that we are in this collectively. We to classes and do with our studies. There's some in UCT, students are saying they're going back, saying one will go back to class. So we'll see how that turns out in the whole week. But we have said to University Vice Management that they need to ensure that the rights of all are protected. The rights to protest is there in the Constitution, the rights to associate be protected. But also those ones who are saying to go to class, they must be given that right. I think we have reached a point where we know implications of this are, and we know also the implications of our ongoing protests.
So, Dr. Park, the President in his statement said, you know, this is a measure. In the long run, there is our efforts to try and deal with all the other issues that the students raised. The Portfolio Committee also today reiterated that position. Exactly is going to go into that process. What is going to be post today?
I think the first thing is the task team that we set up already with the issues for if students early next year when students come into. So that was the task team that was set up about a month ago now at a meeting between and the VCs and chairs of council a month. You know, issues were raised because we knew that there were problems. It wasn't that there was no sensitivity to the problems. And the task team was set up there to look specifically at issues of the NSFAS shortfall, students coming back, to ensure that students, when they're will be able to come into the system and work on financial grounds. And that's that issue of poor students who are being supported, who have some. In what has happened now after the meeting we had is that other issues have also been to the things that will have to be discussed and thought. I'm not yet sure exactly where those will take us to. We'll take those through in the same meeting, I think, the task team. So we are meeting with that task team Saturday. It's our second meeting of the task team. We will then have to look at the other issues that have been brought up. Many of them are much longer term issues.
Right.
So the now, I think, is one issue, and we're going to have it. But the other issues are issues like the big question of free education, other issues that have been brought up by students, a number there that Tarbert mentioned earlier.
Prof, government is often criticized that whenever there's a problem, a task team is set up. Yet another task team. Is that the problem?
Well, before I answer that question, I just want to say it's problematic in a way that actual real representative here from the Fees Must Fall movement who of students. So we don't actually know what's happening on various previous campuses that was previous the black campuses like UW. So in any case, so I don't know what's happening there.
Let me because it's a good point, Prof, that you're raising.
Yes.
We did invite them. We were supposed to have today the president of the VETS SRC, Nombendulo Mkhatshwa, but she had to decline last minute because apparently from here in studio now there is a meeting that's longer than planned to try and deal with tomorrow.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. To answer your question about the task team, the obligation on the state is that it has to take reasonable steps to make higher education available to everyone and not to allow discrimination in the system, and that includes, of course, indirect discrimination where people are discriminated because they are poor, so we know because of our system, because they are black. So the question is where nothing has happened up to now. I understand policies that are decisions that are made about how to spend, but the question is why was policy decision not to spend more on higher education, and how that?
Let's get Dr.
And so we have to think.
Let's get a response on that. Why has there been no movement?
I think that perhaps one has to look at because in 2010, after the NSFAS review report, the to Parliament and argued for additional. At that particular time, NSFAS funding was doubled. Yes, more funding was made available by the state, but not sufficient to cover every student. And in fact, at that particular time, NSFAS for university students was a huge step forward.
But now
so we're talking about
for free, and I think the middle ground is somewhere free education for poor students. But where is the money? What's the plan? What is government working on?
Well, I think let me saying before we
are running out of time. We've got to go to get that answered as well.
But the issue is that to get education for the poor, utilizing in this understanding, there are a number of issues around what it means free. How do we identify who is, what should be free, what shouldn't be free, etc. How do we understand that should be there be some part? All of those sorts of things. There are huge policy decisions to be made, and those policy decisions are what are in the policy dialogue that we began last about July. And on that policy dialogue is ourselves, the South African Union of Students, Department of Performance Monitoring and Evaluation.
Take the break. Dr. Parker, and the problems associated with NSFAS we have discussed on this program, but the question I would like is what is the actual plan going forward to try for the students? Do join us after the break. Back, Lufuno Isaac No on Facebook said, running away from its promise during elections, the ANC free education. We do not have to fight with the ANC for them to keep their promise. Two shoes. Some interesting on social media says, build more technical, focus on maths and science. Portia Lidwaba says we need of higher learning to be built. Aldine Zacharias, government should stop free housing. It is what is draining of the state. And Prof. De Vos, one of the came through earlier, and I haven't been able to read all of those, saying, where is the private sector in all of this? That come forward and want to grab the best graduates, putting enough effort to try and make sure that solution here. Your thoughts on that?
Yes, well, I think it would be fantastic, of course, if the private sector gave to students. I'm a little bit nervous about people giving money and then they are strict and then they say, yes, educate these students, but teach them X, Y, and Z so that they can become good for our system. So if the private sector created a fund, as was suggested today in the Times, and said we are going to support 20,000 students that is really deserving, and we're going to fund all of their study for their full degree. That's the kind of thing that really should happen, because that's an investment, something that you waste when you investment in the future of those companies, and of course.
But what kind of pressure do we need to put on the Prof, what kind of pressure do we need to put on the to ensure that they actually do that and they play their...
The problem is that the primary obligation in the Constitution is still on the state, of course. So the state is actually the one with the primary obligation. The can do to pressurize the private sector is the same kind of thing, to try and pressurize the private sector to take empowerment more seriously, to say, well, if you contribute, say, this, or if you contribute to education, then it can add to your score for getting business from government, whatever the case might be. There are many sticks and carrots about this clearly, but there are things that you can do to make people want to do something that they otherwise might.
All right. I see you are agreeing vehemently here.
Look, we believe that the state has a major role to play in the question of free education, and the not enough money. I don't buy into it.
Where do you think the money should be stateside?
No, look, I think the state must set its priority right. We need nuclear when we don't have skills in the country. We don't have a project of infrastructure when we don't have the necessary skills and the is not educated in this country. So we need to have our priorities right. We need to force the private sector to fund education in this country.
Force, not incentivize.
And it's ridiculous, I believe, of them to be contributing that little.
Are you saying we should incentivize them further, or should we
have
tougher ways to force them?
I don't believe we must incentivize them for education they use. I think we must use our legislative power, treasury, which is also part of the bigger problem. I'm not going to move with what I say. I believe treasury also is one of those institutions in the is a problematic here, because they must give
but they're saying they're juggling too many.
They need to tax the corporate sector. They are making that profit, taking it out of the country. Tax for education tax, wealth tax must education tax. Those taxes must be raised, and this argument that they will run away, I don't think it's true. It's happening. South Africa does not have one of the tax rates in the world. Other countries even because they have bigger taxes than most South Africans are paying. And all cases, whether it's developing youth programs and so forth and so on, there's always a complaint that I think the legislative power of the state must be used to quiet.
Parker, what will you as a department be doing to try and put more pressure, as is being suggested here, to get more money?
Put pressure on the Treasury every single year. We do. We for year after year, put pressure on Treasury to try and get money. I don't think it's an issue of Treasury. I do think it's at a higher level that a political needs to be made.
Why do you think that political decision hasn't come through? It's been in the ANC's documents to say free education is...
It's the way in which it works at the moment with the various companies. But I think what has happened now has made up and look and say, okay, we really have to deal with this issue. We have to take our students. We need to look at the issue of higher education as a public and a private good. And I think it's an important thing to recognize.
Okay, I'm going to buy you a box of chocolates because we have to go. But I do understand that you're making is a very valid one, but we have run out of time. All my guests for talking to us tonight. And let's continue the conversation on social media. Good night.